the answer for
All right, folks, good evening. This is the Monday Night Rule of Law Radio Traffic Show with your host, Eddie Craig. It is September 10th, 2012. We are live tonight. We are not Memorex. All right. Now, I want to go over something that we've been going over for the last couple of weekends in our class down at Brave New Books. And what this is basically is trying to get you oriented into more or less the things to say and do and the things to not say and do during your traffic stop, during your pretrial, and so on and so forth. These judges have a lot of tricks they like to try to pull to induce you into saying or doing something that will give them the leverage they need to move forward. The officers are trained to do the same thing. So what I've done is I've wrote a little practice script here, which we're also going to be using this coming Saturday night at 7 p.m. down at Brave New Books. We are going to do a live arrest presentation for folks down there so that you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do when you are pulled over by a police officer. Things you don't do physically, things you don't do orally, or I should say verbally, just in case, some of you are Polish. But I'm kidding. In any case, what we need to look at here is the things to say and the things to avoid saying. So we're just going to step through the script relating to a traffic stop. And when we do that, pay close attention to the way it reads. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say each part as we do it. I'll say officer, and then I'll say what he's supposed to say, and then I'll say you, and then I'll read what you're supposed to say. Okay, that way you'll know what lines should be coming out of your mouth and what lines should be coming out of theirs, or some reasonable approximation thereof. One thing we specifically avoid doing is acknowledging any of the 7 commercial terms. Just like we do in court, we avoid them on the side of the road. Why? Because a recording is being made, and I fully intend to get my hands on that recording for purposes to be named later. So I need that recording, and I need it to reflect the truth and facts as I assert them at trial. So we need to keep our minds clear, be calm, not get agitated, not get flustered, and basically just practice this over and over again till it comes to you automatically in response to what they do. It's just like learning a part in the school play. Everybody got their lines, they went home, they rehearsed, they practiced, they memorized. That's what you need to do with this. So while we're going through this, please feel free. It will be in the archive later, so you can download it and review it at your leisure. You can write your own script up from it, so on and so forth. All right, so we're going to start from the point of an actual traffic stop. So when the officer pulls you over and you're both, hopefully, on private property or in a parking lot and not the side of the highway, remember, the rule is, if at all possible, slow down, acknowledge the officer, turn on your emergency flashers, whatever you got to do to let him know you're not trying to evade him in any way, shape, or form. But we do not want to pull over on the side of the road. That gives them the ability to tow your car under false pretenses. So don't give it to them. Pull onto private property or in a private parking lot where the excuse to tow does not exist. If they tow it from there, it's aggravated robbery. Okay? So, let's start through this. Now, you people that have listened to this show quite regularly know there are 3 basic questions. Well, this script is going to start going into a little bit more detail, and I'll explain that why also before we start. It has come to my attention that some people, once they run out of the 3 questions, stop talking entirely. They don't respond, they don't reply, they don't do anything. Now, this, of course, irritates the officer to no end, and it makes you look uncooperative. It's not that I want you to remain absolutely silent when you do the 3 things at the end, which is shut up, keep shutting up, and shut up some more. What I don't want you to do is to engage the officer in conversation and not pay attention to what's coming out of your mouth. The more you talk and the more freely you do so without thinking, the more likely you are to say something that is going to hurt your case later. That's the reason for the shut up, keep shutting up, and shut up some more. Now, the purpose of this script is to give you a wider range to work with and still prevent you from opening mouth and inserting foot. Okay? So let's work with this and understand why we're doing it. You, what is the emergency and how can I help you? The officer, do you know why I stopped you? You, is there a recording being made of this encounter? The officer will say yes. You, for the record, am I under arrest? The officer will say no, or that you're in investigative detention, which we know in Texas is a lie. You, for the record, am I free to go? Again, no, you're not free to go. So we now have a contradiction between under arrest and free to go. That's what we want to establish, that a reasonable individual does not feel that he is able to leave the scene of his own volition. The courts clearly state that constitutes a custodial arrest. Plus, we have the statute to further support that. You, for the record, I am not engaging in transportation or any type of commercial use of the roads. Do you acknowledge that you have been so informed, officer? Officer, yes, I do. Now answer my question. Do you know why I stopped you? You, since I have informed you that I am not engaging in transportation and you acknowledge that fact, then I have no idea why you would be stopping me. Officer, I stopped you because you were speeding. You were doing 45 and a 35. I need your license, registration, and proof of insurance. You, excuse me, but can you use any of that information against me in a court of law or further charge me for some other pretend offense? Officer, I asked you to produce your license, registration, and proof of insurance. Do you intend to do so or not? You, officer, I am not meaning to be disagreeable. However, I have rights, and one of those rights is not to provide evidence or testimony against myself, and another is that I am protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. Do you intend to punish me for invoking those protected rights? Officer, I do not intend to punish you. The law requires that you produce that information on demand, and if you do not give it to me, then I will have to arrest you. You, officer, as you should be well aware, the law cannot require or compel me to surrender any protected rights. The law also cannot lawfully or legally provide you with the power to harm or punish me for invoking those rights. And threatening me with arrest and incarceration without warrant or trial is a threat for invoking that right. You, again, you continue. You have acknowledged your understanding of the fact that I am not engaging in transportation. By continuing to ignore that fact, you are subjecting me to the rules and regulations of a regulable activity by attempting to compel me to engage in it against my will and right to not contract. However, despite your acknowledgement, you are still obviously trying to charge me with an alleged transportation-only offense. Your power to issue citations in lieu of arrest is discretionary, meaning you can choose to use that power to violate my rights, which will also make you directly responsible and liable for those violations, or you can issue a citation instead. Do you intend to use your authority and power of arrest for the purpose of further violating my rights, or simply issue a citation for the alleged charges? Now, this is where the officer's got some decisions to make, and hopefully he will make the correct one. However, with the current IQ level and testosterone level of these individuals, don't bank on them making the right choice in most cases. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you, I don't think all of our law enforcement people are bad. I absolutely do not. I honestly believe there are some good ones out there. The problem is that when you roll the dice, you usually don't wind up with the good one. That just tells me that they're outnumbered. And because they're outnumbered, you have to treat all of them like they think they have to treat all of us, because the officers are outnumbered. So the way this works is he's going to have to think about, well, if I arrest them, then they're going to charge me with attempting to violate their rights or punishing them for invoking the rights. He's got to start thinking about that now. Now, again, IQ and attitude may make that a very short determination. But if he really is there with the intent to serve the public, then he's going to have to weigh those possibilities. Because he should be aware, any common sense thought process should be aware that taking you to jail is something that serves no purpose other than to punish you for not doing everything he wanted. And that's exactly how the conclusion's going to have to come out, because he knows very well he can absolutely not arrest you. When he says, I have to arrest you, that is a lie. He can issue a citation in lieu of any transportation offense. Any transportation offense. Other than one involving an accident that's alcohol related. That's the only one he cannot issue a ticket for. So, given that, when he says he has to arrest you, then he is trying to intimidate you into consenting to play his game. Don't play his game. That sets you up for a fall later, especially if the prosecutor wants to use this tape in court. Why? Because if you start making charges, trying to get the testimony and evidence suppressed, they're going to haul in that video and say, see, Judge, right here, they voluntarily pulled out that license and gave it to that officer. Sure, the officer told them that he could take them to jail, which isn't what he actually said, but that's the implication they're going to make to the judge and the jury. But he did take it out and he voluntarily handed it over. So, Judge, this person can't say that they were coerced or compelled. And the judge will most likely agree with them because the statute supports the proposition that you must surrender your right to exercise the privilege, which we know is wrong. We cannot be compelled by any statute to surrender protected rights in order to exercise a pretend privilege, which is what engaging in transportation is, driving and operating. Those are pretend privileges. We're not using privileges. We are using the roads as a matter of right. They belong to us. We have the right to travel on them. We can't use them for commercial purposes, but we can use them for private purposes to get from here to there. All right, folks, this is Rule of Law Radio. 512-646-1984 is the call-in number. We'll be right back on the other side of this break, so start calling in. All right, folks, we are back. Rule of Law Radio, Monday night traffic show with your host, Eddie Craig. Deborah Stevens is producing tonight, and I appreciate her assistance greatly, and she is screening our calls. Randy does not come in on Monday nights, which makes the show flow much smoother in some cases, I think. But, hey, Randy's a great guy, don't get me wrong. Now, when we're going through these things with these officers, again, what you say can and will hurt you later. What you don't say can just tick somebody off unless you don't say it properly. Here, we're not acting like a brick, okay? We're not sitting there ignoring the officer like he doesn't matter, or we're suddenly in a different time zone where his voice doesn't carry. So what we have to understand is they believe they have a job to do, and they do. The problem is they're doing it to the wrong people. So we give them outs. And this is one of them. The ability to acknowledge that they have been informed you're not engaging in transportation. After they get sued a couple of times, that will click, especially when they go through federal court and those issues are brought out to the light of day right in front of them. Because they're going to be a defendant in that suit, and they're going to have to sit there and listen to the testimony that comes out that shows that they didn't have a clue what they were doing or why they were doing it. He's going to wind up feeling like a used, betrayed fool, and he will be right. Because the system has set him up to take the fall on its behalf. One, by not informing him of these particular facts. 2, not properly training him how to deal with them. 3, most definitely not training them on what the protected rights of the people are in relation to these activities. And 4, by getting someone, in most cases, with such a low IQ and opinion of humanity that they think the only way they can interrelate with the general population of America is through force and coercion. That is specifically the reason why I admonish you folks not to say or do something that's going to get you injured in these cases. Don't do that. Do not act threatening. Do not talk threatening. Be calm, collected, and straightforward. Okay? I mean, I wished I'd have had a video camera crew present the day I got pulled over in Rockdale. That officer, Brian Lightfoot, he was the epitome of what every officer should be like. He never lost his temper. He never lost control. And despite the fact that I was throwing more information at him than T-Close did through his entire 10 weeks inside of 10 minutes, he still stood there and listened intently. He was even to the point where he was like, "Sir, if you will please just let me see some form of identification, I will write you a ticket and you can be on your way." And I kind of had to laugh for a second. And so I said, well, just so you understand that my production of this license, and it is expired, by the way, is not for the purpose of admitting I'm engaging in any form of transportation. I use it strictly as a picture ID. And that's the only reason I use it. Now, folks, if you're one of those individuals that has both a license and a state ID, never give them the license unless you're a commercial driver, of course. Never give them the license. Okay? Always give them the state ID. Now, they may charge you with not having a license, but you can worry about that part later. Okay? But once they run it, they know for a fact you have one. So for them to charge you for not having one, that's gross stupidity on their part. They know that's a false charge right off the bat. And if they attempt to arrest you, okay, because they're saying, well, you don't have a license, when they just ran you through the computer and know darn well that you do, they have really compounded their problems on that point. Okay? So it does not behoove them to lie, mislead, and misrepresent any more than it will you. Now, Napoleon has a very apropos quote relating to this. Never interrupt your enemy while he's busy making a mistake. That, folks, can sum up a traffic stop so well because these officers are making constant mistakes, and they will make many. In fact, I've sat down and I've evaluated every stop I've ever had, and I can say for a fact that there will always be a minimum of 5 due process violations that occurs in any given traffic stop, even if the officer lets you go and doesn't write a ticket. There will be a minimum of 5. So, given that, we need to understand that they've not been properly instructed. They're acting only on what their own thought processes and what little bit they have been taught is directing them to do. So it is not entirely their fault. Okay? It's like teaching your dog to ask to go outside when he has to use the bathroom, but you leave him locked up in the house alone all day and you don't install a doggy door. You don't leave him a way out. So eventually he's got 2 options. Take out a window or a glass door, or go in the house. That's pretty much where they've left these officers. They've left them in the house with the training to ask to go out and do things, but no training on how to open the door or how to find an alternate exit. So we will conveniently provide one for them and show them how easy it is to use. Your power of arrest here is discretionary. You can write a citation, or you can choose to further violate my rights by arresting and incarcerating me. Which do you choose to do? Now, he's admitted there's a recording being made of this. And hopefully, if you're doing your part, you're making 2 or 3 of your own. So there's not going to be an out for this guy anytime soon if he chooses the wrong course of action. So be nice, be cordial, but stand firm on your rights, because the video will show that you voluntarily waive them if you don't invoke them. Okay? This is how we're going to invoke them. This script will be a lot more complete when we get it into the new book I'm doing. The new book I'm doing is going to be directed specifically at these types of cases, misdemeanor cases, the traffic stop. And generally the reason we do traffic is because you can get Class A, B, or C misdemeanors in traffic. It is possible. And the defense for any of these things is, it doesn't change really between whether it's a transportation misdemeanor or some other form of misdemeanor. The reason is the only real difference is that the transportation offense is nullified by not being engaged in the activity. The defense in the other cases will be by proving, such as, for instance, you get arrested for, let's say, malicious mischief or mischievous destruction of property, just, a Class B or something like that. The defense for those will simply be proving that your due process rights were violated when the code of criminal procedure was not followed properly. But unless you know what that is, you won't know that it's been violated. So the point of this book is to walk you through everything in the procedure, everything, from the very beginning all the way through the appeal process, step by step by step. I will give you a breakdown of every type of case I've ever sat through and witnessed, read about, whatever. And set this up. We'll discuss the legal issues at each point. We'll talk about the legal argument for that issue, and so on and so forth. All right, folks. Dean, I see you there on the board. We will pick up calls on the other side. So, folks, 512-646-1984 is the call-in number. Give us a call, questions, queries, posers, anything of that nature, and we'll get this ball rolling for the rest of the show. We'll be right back on the other side of this break.